when we were deciding what should be the title of this webinar, we discussed in our executive committee, and the right title that we thought at this point of time would be the title to see in the context of major changes that are happening in the energy scenario globally and Indian context. And therefore, we thought that this would be the most appropriate title for this seminar, Diversification and Transformation. Because petroleum sector constitutes a major component of our energy consumption, energy demand in the country. I think it has almost while itself has these two major components of petroleum sector constitute out of the total basket of energy 27 plus and 6 plus, almost 33-34% of the energy consumption in the country. So it has been a major contributor to the economic development, to the industrial development, and overall development in all sectors of economy. And at this point of time, energy sector is going through major changes. Changes would be very simple word to say. It is going through technological disruption, particularly after coming of the solar power in such a big way just in the last 5-6 years at affordable prices, which Dr. Malhotra was just mentioning. This whole scene has changed. Everybody is trying to think what to do in next 5 years, next 10 years, next 15 years. NTPC, which was set up as a thermal power company, is now almost it has slowed down considerably. The thermal power additions has changed its name itself. NTPC, no longer National Thermal Power Corporation. There are others. Tata Power has decided not to go in for a new coal-based power plant. Government is thinking in terms of some of the old plants which are not so efficient to gradually shut them down. So major changes are happening. And in the context of petroleum sector, which is one of the core contributor to the economic development, how long we continue and how much we continue on our conventional inputs to the economy has become an issue. Like Dr. Malhotra mentioned in his introductory lecture, that things are changing in such a big way. Now, we have to see whether we continue to depend on imported crude in such a big way. We continue to depend on the imported gas in such a big way, because we had a seminar on gas, and gas people would advocate that from present 6% or 7%, it should go to something like 15%, because world over it is higher percentage. But the problem is that even if we look at gas, our domestic production in the long run and at present as well is not contributing more than 50% of our total consumption in the gas sector. And if we increase it to 15%, then import component will be even more. I think while the government on the one hand is trying to make things Atmanirbhar, as much as possible, we should do domestic, try to harness our domestic resources. And on the other hand, in the petroleum sector, if we continue to have dependence of the order of 85% on the petroleum side and 50% now, and even it can increase if we increase the gas consumption, and gas consumption is bound to increase. It may not remain at 6-7%, it is bound to increase. Our city gas distribution system and others are going to demand. But the issue would be, what should we do going forward in next 5, 10, 15 years so that our dependence on import reduces considerably, but more importantly, now is also the time when climate change has become, it was always there for the last 20, 30 years, climate change discussions were always in the forefront, but now it is even more because of so much of ecological degradation, ecological disturbances, so much of problems happening all over the world, and whole world is thinking in terms of how best we should reduce the component of fossil fuel in our economic development, in our industrial activities. And therefore, we decided that we should have the title of this seminar to address the petroleum sector in terms of what are the directions in which petroleum sector should be going. Should they continue the way we have been doing, or it should change its direction? It is in that context that now many things are happening. Railways changing its dependence on petroleum products in a big way to power. They had only 16, 17,000 kilometers of railway traction on electricity. Now they are thinking in terms of almost entire, leaving out a few uneconomical sections, have electric traction. Railway is going in a big way. Even in our kitchen now, people are thinking in terms of whether we should continue to depend on petroleum product, or we should get into electric gadgets to take care of major portion of our domestic needs in our kitchen. That is another. Electric vehicle may not be as fast as we are thinking, but definitely if we take 5 to 10-year time frame, electric vehicle will become an order of the day. Hydrogen can also be a fuel for electric vehicle and mobility. That is another thing in the pipeline. Coal sector is thinking in a big way to transform into gasification or even producing hydrogen. Reliance, the largest, one of the largest refiner in the world, has decided to go in a big way to produce hydrogen. So these are the things that are happening in a very, very different manner. Take, for example, Indian agriculture. In agriculture, since electricity supply has not been reliable in the past, now it is somewhat different. They are now getting into, more and more states are getting into the mode of having decentralized distributed generation on solar mode, so that irrigation is handled through solar system, solar pumps, or otherwise solar electricity, and getting the irrigation done. I think these are far-reaching changes that are happening, and they will definitely have impact on the petroleum sector. The petroleum sector has to see whether it should have in their petrol pumps or otherwise battery backup. Battery backup is a major thing that is happening, because when you have such a large scale expansion of solar system to something like 450,000 megawatt by 2030 or 2035, definitely we will have need for having backup in evenings. So many alternative options are being examined, so many alternative options. But then one of the option is the electric thing, where charging of electrical vehicle becomes an important thing. And you were giving diesel and petrol, now you will have to give electricity to the electricity driven vehicles. So I think these are the options. Maybe petroleum sector should get into some of these new areas of energy that are emerging, like hydrogen can be one area, on electric vehicle to the extent they can give setup, and batteries they can get into a big way. So I think some of the options that need to be examined by the petroleum sector in a significant way would be that change gradually. It cannot happen tomorrow. It can't happen in next 2, 3, 4 years, but definitely in 5, 10 years time frame, we will be under the pressure of economy, because question is, so far solar power was not affordable. Today it is. So things are becoming, and when the volume increases, like in India, the volume increases, like China, the volume of demand increased, then definitely it had an impact on the price. So research leads to something new, but in the beginning, any research costs you more. Research itself costs you, the product costs you because new. When the volume is increased and economy of scale is favorable, then things become affordable. That is what has happened in solar module. Solar module has been there from 1960s, but it was never affordable. In the last 5 years, from something like 15 rupees per kilowatt hour, now the price is in the range of 2 rupees 50 paise per kilowatt hour. That is how we are getting the solar power. So I think these are the changes that have happened, and this sector, which is more than 1/3 of our energy supply, does need to think in terms of what should be the direction and how should this transition be handled. We are also going to have a seminar on transition in the transition management in the coal sector to net zero. Coal, its journey towards net zero, how do we manage the transition? How do we manage the transition so that other effects are not there. Effects on economy in general, effects on employment in general, they are not there. So I think these are the thoughts we thought we should be discussing in this seminar, and not only in petroleum sector, each segment of energy we are going to discuss one by one. What should be the directional changes in short term, in medium term, and in long term, and how do we manage these changes so that we are up to date A, we are climate friendly B, and we are also economically affordable C. With this, I thank you very much for all the speakers who have joined us to contribute to this. Mr. Sharma, you made that point. But this discussion was that in the light of what is happening and happening very fast in the energy space, all areas of energy, what is it that our petroleum sector is trying to prepare for and looking forward to? Because many of the changes and disruptions that are happening are going to affect if the business as usual continues. The first thing the Prime Minister himself has said that our dependence on import must reduce. So that is most important, because 85% of crude we are importing, only 15% we are producing domestically. And same is the case with gas, about 50% of gas we are importing, and it might become more than 50% if we try to go beyond 6 to 7% of the energy basket so far as gas is concerned. So I think that point is very clear. So we were not discussing, we are moving to, if we get into the problem of which is the date by net zero has to happen and all that, then we will be only digressing in our discussion. One should be happy that petroleum sector, from the ministry down to the corporations and down to the private sector, are alive to the situation. Whether they should be faster than what they are or the present speed is okay, one has to judge, and time will show, because events are overtaking. Reliance has announced a very substantial investment in producing hydrogen. We heard today from Dr. Ram Kumar, we heard also from Petroleum Secretary, some of the directions the corporations under Ministry of Petroleum, they are taking, and he gave a long list. And of course, BCG Group, Mr. Verma, gave a menu of options. I mean, they should get into renewable, they should get into charging infrastructure. I think IOC also made that point. They are working on variety of options: methanol blending with petroleum, methanol gas blending with CNG, and then the pipeline being used for both hydrogen as well as the gas, and mixing or blending. So I think discussions are going on. They have to be converted into project management mode. Whatever is appearing to be feasible. Somebody said that hydrogen cost is n number of times costlier than the petroleum product today. And we heard one of the comments that came that in Canada something has been done where hydrogen cost is not that high. I think good part is that we should be happy that transformation and diversification is being talked at the level of ministry, is being talked at the level of our corporations under the lead upon by some of the major, in fact, Reliance on doing something. So the direction is quite clear that business as usual in none of the areas of power energy sector, whether it's thermal power sector or any other hydropower sector or gas sector or petroleum sector in general. I mean, business as usual would not adequately respond to the fast changing requirements and the way the energy space throughout the world is undergoing. So obviously we will have to be a bit faster. Solar is overtaking. It is good that IOC is getting into solar. One of the suggestions I think Mr. Verma, BCG made, that they can get into solar manufacturing, they can get into solar power development. So I think these are the areas on which we need to work. We will summarize all these discussions and prepare a report. And I think we have overshot the time, and many of the participants, because I keep track of what is the number that was at the peak and what is the number that is going out. So I think it is time we should tell you good contribution you have made, very good contribution. Let us, because it's not the case that the entire thing will vanish. It is not the case, because our growth will be there. petroleum product requirement will be there, crude requirement will be there. So to the extent we can pick up our production, unfortunately in the last 6-7 years, we have remained stagnant both in the field of gas and crude. It has to. You see, the case is not that entire thing will get substituted, cannot be. Neither entire thermal is going to get substituted in foreseeable future. Question is, the trend is towards this, and then good points have come from IOC research team that we are also quite alive to carbon capture and utilization. That means even if we use the product that we are having, firstly, everything is not going to be substituted. It is not going to be stagnant altogether. Therefore, to what extent we can make it more environmentally benign. That is the point. I think petroleum sector has done a lot. Only thing is that last few years we have seen that net addition in either case in terms of expansion is getting, and your point is 100% correct. So many clearances, investment climate, uncertainties. I mean, those are the policy things that have to be taken. In this particular session, the idea was that when energy sector in all segments is going into disruptive technologies, should we not be alive to change business as usual and try to see how best we can manage the situation? Nothing will vanish in next 10, 15, 20 years, nothing will vanish. I think one will be very happy that we reduce our 85% import on crude produced here. One will be very happy if we reduce our 50% import on gas. Very happy. I mean, very good contribution you have made. We will definitely